Try and move that over a bit. Okay, live again. Give some time for people to join me. Hello to the two of you there so far. I've got my notepad as usual to scribble down ideas from yourselves. And as always, I'm audio recording this. Hello again. So that obviously I can turn this into, make sure everything's on, turn this into a story later in the week. As you've probably noticed, I posted a comment in the community tab, I don't know, a few days ago about how, for some reason, these live streams seem to lose me subscribers. So people were sort of given different reasons why they think that might be. But for some reason, this is the fourth one I've done. The three I've done previously have all lost me subscribers through time. Yes, I would like to be asleep, but I'm here talking to you guys instead. So yeah, so I don't know whether I'll carry on doing these or not, because obviously I don't want to do something that's going to lose me subscribers every time I post a video. And these live videos, unlike my sleep stories, lose subscribers ongoing. So for example, my first sleep live stream like this is still kind of 4 weeks later losing me subscribers, and the second one 3 weeks later is still losing me subscribers. The third one is still losing me subscribers. So I can see on the analytics that people are unsubscribing with my live streams for some reason, which is confusing, because it seems that people who actually tune in seem to quite like it. And although the stories aren't as popular on my channel that I do, so for example, my Egyptian cat story from last week, which I quite like. I actually quite like that one. And the Egyptian cat story is doing 20% worse, as YouTube has this thing now to motivate creators, where it shows you how your videos are doing. But what it does is puts in big writing at the top, your video is doing 20% worse than normal, which is really motivating. So yeah, so the I quite like the Egyptian cat story. So the Egyptian cat one is doing 20% worse than my other stories. So I don't know why, but anyway. So hello to everyone who's joining. Anyone who hasn't subscribed before, doesn't know me, I don't want to do the like and subscribe at the end, because I'm hoping that anyone who's watching this in a time zone where you can fall asleep will hopefully be asleep. You don't want me telling a story, getting to the end, and then saying, if you've loved this, like and subscribe. So I'll do it at the beginning. So anyone who's watching this who decides, oh, actually, I quite like that, then give it a thumbs up. If you're watching this video after it's gone live, then obviously comment in the comments box, because you can't comment live. And if you're not a subscriber, then subscribe, and you can see all my other sleep stories. So let's have a little look. Someone's saying about moving to Twitch. I've not tried anything on Twitch ever. I don't know how easy or hard it is to use. I watch things on Twitch, but I've never actually gone through the process from a creator perspective of seeing what it's like. Yeah, love the streams. Someone saying the Egyptian cat story was so imaginative. The interesting thing is that obviously you're saying it's imaginative. It's just created with, it's on the back of my page here. That was the Egyptian cat story. So all it is ideas from yourselves, and I just figure out a way of stringing it all together and hope it works. So, heard it for the first time. Imaginative is the right word, probably, for what I'm thinking you think, as someone else said. Cat stories generally do better, oddly. And very few people watch live. Currently, there's 17 of you on here. Um, and last week, I think there was 36 or something. I think the week before was 34. The week before that was something like 34 or 32 or something. So yeah, because during my 40 bedtime stories for 40 days up to my 40th birthday, I did a cat story, and it had 12,000 views in its first day. No idea why, but so sometimes the cat stories can do quite well. Um, I'm trying to read, talk, and everything at once. Not one for multitasking. Yeah, sometimes people give me some pretty random stuff to string together. The previous week, I think it was, we had aliens, potatoes, or it's an alien with potatoes or something, horse and cart. I can't remember what else, but it was a random selection. And it is interesting to attempt, to see how it's going to turn out, stringing random things together like that. So obviously, when I'm working therapeutically, therapeutically, and I loved your comment, which made me laugh about the potatoes and aliens, about listening out for that. Not your comment, but you commented on the comment, so you'll know what comment I'm talking about. Where was I? Yes, the when I'm doing therapy, I obviously don't know what I'm going to say. I do hypnotherapy, so people think, "Oh, hypnotherapy! I want a script for this and a script for that," and I write. I'll have a book on scripts, but I don't really. I don't like scripts. I think scripts are good for giving you ideas when you're new and you're just trying to get ideas. But generally, I think you want to just look at the person and work with the person in front of you, the human being in front of you, with whatever they give. And so I'll do kind of storytelling therapy, and I don't know what I'm going to do until they give me the content. And so it's very similar to this, except that I don't write anything down. So here I write stuff down because I'm trying to be a bit more specific. But in therapy, I don't write anything down. So if you look at my therapy demonstrations of doing this with actual clients, you'll see I haven't written anything down. I literally just talk with the client. They tell me stuff about their problem. They give away lots of metaphors and lots of different things that I can use. So they might talk about being at a fork in the road. They don't know what path to take. They might talk about being on choppy waters, that they just like their life to be calmer. All of these are metaphors that I will then be kind of memorizing and thinking, oh, I can make use of that. And they'll be giving away the pattern of their problem as well. And then I will take the pattern of their problem, and a bit like how there's thousands and thousands of thriller novels, but all those thrillers pretty much have the same kind of pattern to them. I do a same kind of thing where I take the pattern and then I overlay the things directly from the client that they've given me onto the pattern of their problem. And obviously, at the end of the metaphor will be the solution. And then I just create metaphors with that. So I'm kind of used to doing this in terms of what clients say in therapy. It's a bit different. And I'm always, before a live stream, thinking, oh, am I going to mess it up tonight? Am I going to suddenly think, oh my God, what have they given me now? And not have a clue how to string it together. So I always find it interesting because, unlike therapy, obviously, here, it literally is random types of things. It's not things that a client's giving that are specific to their problem, that are easy to mix and match. So yes, and obviously, if anyone's interested, I haven't messed up once yet. Um, and I do a lot of making the stories, and so no clients have ever given me aliens and potatoes when talking about their problems. Um, so I do nearly every single one of my stories has patterns for not following negative thoughts, or for kind of thinking in a different way to that. Um, so I do cover that within my different stories, but every story I cover it in a different way because every story is made of different therapeutic metaphors. So obviously, if anyone's interested, I do have my bedtime stories for grown-ups book. You can get as ebook or paperback. It's 25 stories to help you fall asleep while reducing stress, worry, and anxiety. And they're 25 stories, obviously, from my YouTube channel. So I chose 25 stories that you guys on here like, and transcribed them, because obviously I talk to a microphone. I don't write them down first of all. Um, so I transcribed them and then obviously put them in a book. And the most active subscribers on my channel, I obviously acknowledge you in the front of the book. Um, so many of you probably know who you are. I think it's 150 of you or something are in the front of my book. So um, missed a few seconds. You haven't missed much. Um, yeah. So obviously, like always, the story will start at 10:30. That gives 20 minutes or so between now and then, according to my clock on my computer. And yes, I've got a lot of stories for people to listen to. People who've been watching my channel for a very long time obviously have had to put up with just one or two stories. But then when I go to bed, I have the same couple of stories that when I feel I need a story to listen to, that I listen to. And I just listen to the same one pretty much over and over again, and have done for years and years. But I know some people say, "Oh, do a story, every day." They'd love me to do a new story every single day. I obviously did that when I did 40 stories last year for my 40th birthday, and it had a very negative effect on my channel, I think. And I noticed that currently, where I post 2 stories a week, the story that I'll be recording tonight, which I'll post hopefully on Saturday, and then the story I post normally on a Tuesday morning, my time. So late at night, somewhere in America. Um, and I noticed since posting 2 stories a week that both videos will get fewer views because they're not listened to so much, and I get fewer subscribers, oddly. So I think there seems to be 1 story a week seems to be the kind of amount that my channel can really take. Any more than that, and I start losing subscribers because I assume I'm posting too often, and maybe they just see notifications from me all the time and want to unsubscribe. Um, uh, the idea is not to have you consciously picking up on the patterns. The difference between the stories I do and so some people listen. I get comments on my videos from people saying things like, one recent one was, "I didn't come here for a guided meditation. I wanted a proper bedtime story." And I describe them as like guided meditations, because the idea is, one thing, I want them to send the person to sleep, but the other is that I want them to be interactive. So I will talk about things like what the sky looks like or something, and expect the person listening along to be kind of engaging with the story and going with it and getting absorbed in the sensory kind of experience, the sensory stuff that I include in how I'm describing things, like touching the bark on trees and things like that. Um, so the idea with the patterns is that you'll probably recognize some of the patterns, because some things are common, like it would be very obvious to anyone listening to something about climbing mountains that it could be about overcoming challenges, creating achievement, not giving into negative thinking, um, gaining a new perspective, all those kind of things. But other things are a little bit more subtle, and so you might not notice consciously uh, what it is that's going on. And that's kind of the idea. I don't want people to consciously be picking up on it all because you might undo it. Um, I've just had loads of comments appear at once. So, yeah, so for example, I'd asked about interest for doing the 12 Days of Christmas thing because I thought it sounded like a good idea. But then, given that the impact on my channel since doing just three videos a week. So I've got a live one that people will see a notification for, or at least even if you don't get a notification, you'll see it in the recently uploaded section and probably in the recommended videos section. And you'll definitely see it if you click on, what videos have come up from your subscribers. I've then got two stories. So that's three videos a week at the moment. And so it's just whether or not, if I did 12 in a row, that would suddenly have a negative effect on here. Let's have a look. Yeah, so gingerbread house idea for 12 Days of Christmas. So I have to decide whether to do a whole 12 or just make some Christmas themed stories over Christmas. But yeah, I do get very confused on YouTube. It's trying to get that balance between sharing videos and obviously keeping people happy and not losing subscribers because of being over keen on doing too much or something. So yeah, so people do have lots of, oh, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. Yeah, a lot of my older stories do have much longer pauses. Some of my very old stories I deleted. I've said this lots of times, obviously, that I deleted about 700 videos or 600 videos or something back in 2010 from my channel, including lots of stories and things. But back between 2007 and 2010, my stories would often have pauses of up to maybe a minute or so, because I know that that would work really well. And I never once had anyone comment on the pauses being too long. It's only in the last year and a half or so that suddenly people have started saying, "Oh, your pause is too long. Don't like your long pauses." And I've got suddenly went through a stage where I got increasingly a large number of complaints about that, and so I started shortening it. And it's only when I got down to about 4 seconds per pause that the complaints kind of stopped. So most of 2018, the pauses are about 5 to 10 seconds for the longest pauses, and yet people have complained about that. Yeah, my meditations, I always have stories, obviously, in them because they're therapeutic meditations. Yeah, that is the other thing about getting through all the stories. If I did 12 in the run up to Christmas, are you going to listen to the 12? Because who's going to want to listen to a Christmas story on December the 26th? So let's have a look. Yeah, the series of stories never worked out. What I found was that people watched the first in the series and don't watch the rest because they say, well, I can't listen. And I actually asked in relation to my Dragon's Fire series, the fact that the others don't really get many views and the first one gets quite a few views. And people kept just saying, well, I never make it through the first story. I don't know how it ends, so I don't want to listen to the second one or the third one or the fourth one or the fifth one, etc., because I didn't have a clue how the first one ended. So at that point, I decided there's no point doing series, because initially I was going to do series. So I do recurring characters, as you'll notice. So like there's the Fantasy Quest ones with the same child who crops up in the library, and then he crops up elsewhere and has different adventures in different stories. So I have certain characters that are the same character across many stories, just going on different adventures. That specific child always starts reading a book, um, and goes on a fantasy adventure of some kind, because that's the kind of books he obviously reads. Um, I've done a story about grief back in maybe 2016. I think there's a story specifically around grief. I've got some story based guided meditations around trauma. So, not grief trauma, but like PTSD type trauma. Um, and again, I used to do themed stories, but people wouldn't, for example, the grief story, people wouldn't listen to the grief story if they didn't have grief. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with listening to the story if if you're not grieving. Um, but people would have this kind of psychological thing of, it's about grief, it's about weight loss, it's about whatever the specific issue is. And so they wouldn't listen to it because they would see it as it's themed and that's not their problem. And so they don't want to listen to it. Even though actually, if what's the theme of it doesn't relate to you, makes no difference. It just means it won't have any impact on you in terms of that problem. If you're not grieving, then the metaphors around helping with grief aren't going to have any kind of knock-on effect to you, because you don't have the problem that they need to address. Um, so, right, start throwing out some ideas of things that this story can be around. Someone had mentioned, I can't remember who because it's gone too high up my chat bit, no sea and wherever it said it. I'm trying to scroll back. I think it said something like no sea or water, but I can't find it now. Got too many questions, too many comments. Whatever it said, if we can try and kind of avoid that. Yeah. So as some of the same characters crop up across multiple stories. Um, I haven't read Thinner by Stephen King. It does distract me a little bit. It depends at what point. So if this is chatting while I'm telling a story. So if I'm telling the story, suddenly lots of chat comes up. So if it's just like a comment, then that doesn't really bother me. But if lots of chat suddenly comes up in the side, because everyone has a different coloured or their own thumbnail, whatever it happens to be, all I see is lots of movement out the corner of my eye. And I've got that temptation, obviously, then to read what's coming up. And if I read, then I'm talking to myself, obviously reading, and I'm trying to talk out loud, telling a story, and that gets confusing. So I try to ignore it while it's scroll if there's something coming up. So the last week there was quite a lot that came up, whereas previous weeks it's not really been a problem. So sweets. So we talk about weight loss and thinner, and then we get sweets. So sweets, gingerbread house. Well, that kind of fits. One thing that you might have noticed I've done is ordinarily, what's so creepy? Oh yeah. Um, one thing that you might have noticed is I generally follow, like last week, I generally pretty much went downwards based on how you gave me the things, the different words. Playing land otters. So maybe otters somewhere. Never know what they're getting up to. Horses and fields. That's very familiar. That's I grew up around horses and fields. Mum used to always comment on. Mum was a riding instructress and used to always comment on my ability to just jump onto horses bareback that haven't been broken in and just manage to somehow calm them and ride them. Although I have been thrown off a few times. Cat, dog, magical forest. I think last time there was a magical forest. I don't know if anyone suggested it, but it's the best place for a unicorn. Yeah, fantasy creatures, fireflies, etc. A butterfly. Lots of animals in this one then. Oh, somewhere I've jumped to load. Ferris wheels, but no clowns. Amusement park. One issue if I do this too often is possibly having too many ideas on a page to try and figure out how to put them all in. Moon, crystals. I think crystals keep on cropping up. A crystal cave. Have to try and read my writing. Mushrooms. What did I see? Oh, I haven't written down crystals. Forest again. Snowflake fairies. Futuristic snowflake fairies. Not all one thing, obviously. I don't know any futuristic snowflake fairies. Don't even know what a snowflake fairy is. Rainbows. Based on what the person said about underwater, I will give the water one a miss this time. But I definitely like the idea of dolphins to an underwater coral castle. Yeah, I quite like using as much as I can, though. I don't know any kind of fairies, apart from the ones that live at the bottom of the garden. And I could possibly make, obviously, 2 stories. Yeah, it is all part of the challenge. I don't have a garden to speak to the fairies in. A green fairy, yeah, from Moulin Rouge. A lot of people liking the idea of a horse as a main character here. Right, we've got about 1 minute, and I've got a page full of ideas. Yeah, I just have to make sure I don't giggle as I read them or as I create something. Right. Where am I? What did I just see come up? Yeah, Pegasus. I was thinking of Pegasus, but people had said unicorn. So I obviously just gave the unicorn wings. Um, I do have the full pen. Right, I'm going to start now and see where we go. So those of you who are just those of you who are just watching, like in America or wherever, feel free to just watch me talking to the camera. Everyone else, those who want to fall asleep, make sure you can get comfortable. Perhaps turn your phone upside down or whatever, so that the screen isn't too bright. So take a moment to get comfortable and close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, you can listen to the sound of my voice. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, you can begin to drift off asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift off asleep faster with the words that I use or with the spaces between my words. And as you continue to drift off asleep, I'm just going to tell a story in the background. And it's a story about a horse. And it's out in a field one morning. And the sun's just beginning to rise. And as the sun begins to rise, so the horse can notice the mist hovering just above the fields, the way the sunlight shines through the trees around the outside of the fields, the long shadows. As the sky becomes lighter, and as the sun continues to rise, and the horse walks around the field, feeling the firm mud beneath its hooves, eating some grass, so the mist can begin to clear. And as the mist begins to clear, so the horse can notice cobwebs in some of the grass and the way the dew catches on those cobwebs and on the grass and seems to make the fields twinkle and sparkle as a light breeze can blow through the fields across that grass. And the horse can go and have a drink from a trough of water and notice how the temperature's warming as that. And then the horse can hear a person approaching the fields. And that person comes up to the fence. And the horse can trot over to that fence and sees the person getting a small paper bag out of their pocket, taking a sweet out of that bag, putting the sweet in the palm of their hand. As the horse carefully lowers its head and uses its lips to pick up that sweet and then eats that sweet, being aware of its mouth salivating slightly as it eats that sweet, and the sweetness going around its mouth. And then the horse watches as the owner puts that bag of sweets back in their pocket. And the horse thinks that they'd quite like another. And they give the owner a friendly nudge with their head. And the owner pats them on the side of the neck. And some dust comes off the side of their neck, catching some sunlight. And the owner puts some feed down for the horse, and the horse eats some of that feed as the owner leaves. And after eating, the horse just trots around its field, eats some grass, lies down on the grass. And without anyone there, the horse has very little to do. And so the horse finds a comfortable spot near a tree, lies down on the ground, and begins to comfortably drift asleep. And as that horse comfortably drifts asleep, so it can hear the wind rustling through the leaves of the tree, sounds of birds in the distance. You can notice the occasional warm bit of sun shining on its face as that horse drifts and floats comfortably into a dream. And as that horse drifts and floats into a dream, so it begins to dream of walking through some woodland towards a clearing. And as it walks through that woodland, so it begins to notice that this woodland isn't like normal woodland. The horse can notice interesting plants, strange glowing plants, some plants with almost like little flashing lights on the leaves that seem to flash and almost bioluminesce as that horse touches and brushes past leaves. And the further into the woodland the horse goes, the denser that woodland seems to get. And as that woodland becomes more dense, so it becomes darker. And the darker it becomes, the more beautiful it becomes with the lights on all the different plants. And the green lights of fireflies flying around, almost like doing figure of eights with each other. And that horse continues to walk deeper into the woodland, heading for the clearing at the far side of the woodland. And while they walk deeper into the woodland, so they can hear the sounds of the birds in this woodland. They can hear the distant barking of a dog. And while they continue, so they notice something moving in one of the trees. And with curiosity, that horse begins to slow down and look up at that tree. And they see the broadest, most beautiful smile, and then a pair of eyes, and then a cat appears in that tree. A cat that seems to have the ability to change the colour and the effect of its fur, to blend in with its surroundings. And the cat's fur changes colour, as if to signal to the horse that it's friendly and to acknowledge, almost like a hello. And the cat stands up and goes to leap out the tree, and the horse thinks it looks too high. And yet the cat leaps anyway, landing on its feet, shaking its bum, moving its shoulders a bit, and then walking confidently to the horse and sitting in front of that horse, meowing. And the horse leans down, and the cat leans up, and they touch noses. And then the horse crouches down further, and the cat climbs up onto its back. And the horse can feel that that cat on its back has decided to slouch down and rest. And it continues walking. And as it walks, so it can feel that cat purring on its back. And it can hear that rumble of the purr. And that purring cat seems to be purring at a frequency that makes that horse feel deeply relaxed and calm. And the horse can notice its breathing slowing and feels itself relaxing and its stride becoming regular. And as it starts heading out towards the clearing, where it can notice that out in that clearing, the sunlight is lighting up whatever's out there, that meadow, and the horse hears some buzzing and whizzing sounds around it. And then notices a green fairy darting around above its head, taking sharp turns, and then hovering. And the green fairy communicates to the horse that there's an experience they need to have, that there are some mushrooms out in that clearing, and to have the experience they need to have, they're going to need to eat one of those mushrooms. And the green fairy asks if the horse is brave enough to trust her and to explore the experience. And the horse acknowledges that they are. And then the fairy flies off. And as that horse arrives at the clearing, so the cat jumps down off their back, weaves its way around their legs before walking back off into the woodland as the horse leaves the woodland and enters long grass of a meadow, the most beautiful meadow flowers, the subtle sound of a slow flowing stream down to a lake further down the meadow. And that horse eats some of the grass and can feel the warmth of the sun as it explores the meadow. And it walks over to the stream, has a drink of that cool, fresh water, and can see a couple of otters down in the lake, lying on their backs, holding front paws, just resting and floating, almost like they're just gazing up at the sky, enjoying being in the moment, perhaps even being in love. And the horse watches for a while, almost mesmerized by the way those otters are just drifting with the current so slowly and gently. Then the horse begins its search for that mushroom. And as it searches for that mushroom, so it sees the most beautiful butterfly flying from plant to plant. And the butterfly seems to almost give off a colour as it flies. almost like it has a slight trail following it of light as it flies from one plant to another and lands on a plant, broadens its wings, and then pulls them together so slowly, so carefully, before flying to another plant. And the horse just watches the different nature with intrigue as it explores the meadow, before eventually finding a patch of glowing green mushrooms. And the horse thinks for a moment about whether it should eat a mushroom or not, and then decides that it's going to trust the green fairy. And the horse eats one of those mushrooms, and then sits down on the ground, rests itself there, and begins to drift comfortably asleep. And as that horse drifts comfortably asleep in the meadow, so it begins to dream. It dreams about walking down into a large cave. And as it dreams of walking down into that large cave, so the horse instinctively starts counting itself down into that cave, feeling like somehow that's what it's supposed to do. Counting itself down deeper into that cave. 10, 9, 8, 7, deeper into the cave. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the horse finds itself deeply in that cave. It can hear the distant dripping sound of water. And notices there are crystals in the walls of the cave, crystals poking up from the floor, crystals in the ceiling of the cave, pink crystals, purple crystals, blue crystals, green crystals, and all of them are glowing, giving off light, as if somehow something's powering these crystals. And as that horse walks around the cave and goes near to the different crystals, so it notices that each crystal seems to have a slight hum to it, almost like each crystal is an energy device, somehow giving off different frequencies of energy. So the blue crystals are vibrating with one frequency, pink crystals with another, purple crystals with another. And as the horse goes near different crystals and gently touches the different crystals, so each crystal gives it a slightly different experience. Each crystal seems to vibrate and send that vibration through that horse, just very subtly, but enough to have that horse almost synchronize with the energy of that crystal, touching one crystal, feeling calm, touching another crystal, feeling confident, touching another crystal and feeling happy. And the horse is curious about how this works and what's going on here. And the horse can see that there's a way out of this cave. And so it continues through that cave and heads out of that cave into what seems to be like the park of a city. And as that horse walks out into that park, so it can notice people walking around. And those people walking around, it notices, seem to have holograms walking around with them. And it watches, and it watches as those people walk around with those holograms, wondering where they're projecting from, and notices outside the park in the distance the tall towers of a city and lots of flying drones seeming to weave themselves through those towers. And the horse views this scene with intrigue. And as it walks through the park, so it begins to hear the sounds of a fairground. And with curiosity, the horse decides to go and explore and find out more. And it trots through the park, through grass, and then onto more firm pavements. And then sees a fairground and enters that fairground and sees children with candy floss and thinks of the sweets of its owner, and sees a large wheel with people climbing on, and that wheel slowly moving around, and the horse wondering, what is it people get on it for? It's just a chair that goes up in the air and comes back down again. And the horse becomes deeply intrigued with one of the rides that seems to be lots of gold and brightly coloured horses, and bizarre music playing, and it seems to spin around and around, and the horses go up and down, and children are sitting on those horses, and couples are sitting holding hands on those horses as they go round and around, up and down, as music plays in the background. And people walk in all directions and seem to be having so much fun. And the horse is curious why someone would pay to sit on a horse that isn't real, that just goes around in a circle and doesn't seem to get anywhere. And you just end up getting off where you got on. And then the horse hears some screaming, but it doesn't sound like people screaming with fear. And it goes to explore and sees on top of a building a roller coaster and people in carts screaming as the cart drops down, and then being quiet as that cart seems to ratchet its way up again and work its way round a course, working its way round a course, ready to drop down again. And this horse finds this the most bizarre place. Then it sees a machine that seems to be a fortune telling machine that says to ask a question and it'll give you an answer. And the horse goes over to that machine, asks, "Will I ever find love? Will I ever have anyone to share my life with?" And then taps the button on the machine with its nose. And the machine whirs and moves, makes some different sounds. Lights flash up the side, along the top, on the front. And then out pops an answer, just saying yes. And the horse thinks that's unlikely. It's just a game. And then leaves that machine. And the horse continues to explore the park and goes to the boundaries of the park to look out over the city and notices that all the cars seem to be driving themselves, that the people in all the cars are facing each other or just sitting, reading, or wearing glasses, and the horse has no idea what's going on behind the glasses. And there seems to be no traffic lights. Everything just seems to move like clockwork, almost like some higher power is controlling everything. And the horse feels that maybe this park is the one place all these humans have to go, where they've got the freedom to make their own decisions, do their own thing, and to take control of their journey, not just their destination, and enjoy their journey, enjoying paying attention to their journey, rather than doing something else while the journey takes care of itself. And so that horse then turns around and starts to find its way back through that park. It sees someone walking a dog, throwing a ball for that dog, and the dog sprints off, runs straight past that ball, circles around, pauses for a bit while it tries to find where that ball has gone, finds the ball, runs back, tail wagging, to its owner, jumps up and down, the owner throws the ball again. And then that dog comes back with that ball again, and the owner crouches down, and the dog jumps up, front paws on their lap, nudging with their nose on the owner's face, the owner rubbing the sides of the dog rubbing the side of its head on the side of the owner's head, resting its chin on the owner's shoulder. And the horse loved that sight of companionship and the love those two clearly have for each other. And it headed back towards that crystal cave, found its way back through that crystal cave, and then found itself back in that meadow where the mushrooms were. And the horse found its way through the meadow, back through the woods. And after a while, the horse could begin to hear that tree in that field, could begin to hear the sounds of birds, could feel itself waking up in that field. It woke up in the field, hearing sounds across the other side of the field, and could see its owner placing some hay down in the field, over the far side of the field. And the horse trotted over to the owner, but the owner walked off. And so the horse just began to eat that hay. And while it was eating the hay, so it saw the owner returning, with the horse walking along beside them. And the owner walked to the gate, opened the gate, and that horse walked into the field. The owner closed the gate behind them, and the two horses went over to each other and realized that they got on straight away. And they walked along, touching sides with each other, synchronizing movements, head movements, steps, walking around the field together, eating, drinking together. And then resting against each other as the sun started to set. And the sounds began to change around them. The two horses with their breathing synchronized, resting, touching each other. This horse wondered about that machine and felt a good feeling inside. And drifted and floated comfortably and relaxed, asleep.